Galaxist Prime was the most famous academy in the galaxy. Bright stars floated outside its glass walls, and students from hundreds of alien worlds walked through its shining halls. Some were tall with silver skin. Some had glowing eyes or wings. Among them walked Scifi, a young girl from the Valorian race. Valorians were known for being smart, serious, and always in control of their feelings. Scifi was proud to be one of them. Today, Scifi was walking to her science class, her long silver hair shining under the lights. She carried a small tablet and adjusted her indicator bracelet, a special device that all Valorians wore. This bracelet glowed only when it sensed a deep connection to another being, something very rare. Usually, it stayed dark. As she reached class, her teacher, a tall blue-skinned being named Professor Rail, greeted the students. "Today, you will work in pairs for the big project," he said. "Partners have already been chosen. Check your tablets." Scifi sat down and looked at her screen. When she saw the name of her partner, her eyes widened. Even Carter, human. A human. Scifi had heard of humans. They were new to the Galactic Alliance, and many other species thought humans were strange. Some said they were too emotional. Others said they were too unpredictable. Scifi had never spoken to one before. Before she could think more, a voice called out, "Hey, looks like we're partners." Scifi looked up. Even stood there with a friendly smile. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and warm brown eyes. His clothes were simple, and his bag hung over one shoulder. "Hello," Scifi said politely, standing up. "I suppose we should begin." "Sure," Even said, holding out his hand for a handshake. "Nice to meet you, Scifi." Scifi hesitated. Valorians didn't often shake hands, but she had studied human customs. Wanting to be polite, she reached out and gently took his hand. The moment their hands touched, Scifi's indicator bracelet lit up in a soft, glowing blue light. Her eyes went wide in shock. She quickly let go of Evan's hand and stepped back, hiding her wrist behind her. "Whoa," Evan said, surprised. "Did I do something wrong?" Scifi shook her head quickly, her mind racing. "No, it's nothing," she said, though her voice was quieter than usual. Evan looked at her, curious. "Your bracelet, it glowed when you touched me. Is that normal?" Scifi forced a small smile. "Sometimes it reacts to things," she said, not wanting to explain more. She looked away, trying to calm herself. Why did it glow? She thought. It should only activate when it senses a rare connection. But humans and Valorians were not even close in biology. "Okay," Even said slowly, "if you say so." He sat down beside her. "So about this project, want to get started?" Scifi nodded, still feeling confused, but she opened her tablet to look at the project outline. "We are supposed to design a small energy device together," she said. As they started talking about ideas, Scifi kept glancing at her bracelet. It was now dim again, but she could still feel a strange warmth where Evan had touched her hand. Evan was different from what she had expected. He was funny, making small jokes about the project, but also clever. When Scifi suggested complex designs, Evan found simple ways to improve them. "You know," Evan said with a grin, "you Valorians are super smart, but sometimes a human way of thinking can help too." Scifi raised an eyebrow, but couldn't help a small smile. "Perhaps," she admitted. As they worked, Scifi realized that Evan was easy to talk to, much easier than many others at the academy. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the bracelet. After class ended, Evan stood up and stretched. "Well, I guess we make a good team," he said cheerfully. "See you tomorrow, partner." Scifi hesitated but nodded. "Yes, tomorrow." As Evan walked away, Scifi touched her bracelet gently, watching its soft glow fade completely. "What are you, Evan Carter?" she whispered to herself. For the first time in her life, Scifi felt unsure of her world and of herself. Somewhere in the galaxy, something had just changed, and neither Scifi nor even knew how big the change would be. Scifi walked quickly through the academy halls, her mind full of questions. Her silver hair floated slightly behind her as she moved, but she didn't notice anyone around her. All she could think about was the way her indicator bracelet had glowed when she touched Evan's hand. It had never done that before. She reached her private study room and closed the door. The room was quiet and filled with soft blue light. On one wall, there were shelves of books and data pads. Scifi sat at her desk and placed her wrist on the table, staring at the bracelet. "What did you sense?" she whispered to it. The bracelet was silent now. No light, no sound. But Scifi knew what she had seen. Valorian indicators only glowed when they sensed a rare and deep connection, something that could affect a person's entire life. It was usually something special, like finding someone with a perfectly matched mind or soul. But how could a human cause that reaction? Scifi tapped her tablet, pulling up data about human biology. She read for a long time, eyes moving quickly across the glowing screen. Humans were physically different from Valorians. Their DNA, their energy patterns, even the way their minds worked. Everything was supposed to be incompatible. "This is impossible," she muttered. Still, her bracelet had reacted. There had to be a reason. Scifi thought for a moment, then sat up straight. "I need to know more," she said firmly. She opened a program that could scan for energy patterns and genetic markers, but she knew she couldn't ask Avon directly. He would think she was strange, or worse, trying to spy on him. "I'll have to scan when he's not looking," she decided. The next day, Scifi arrived at class early. She sat at the same table where she and Evan had worked before. Her tablet was ready, and she had programmed it to quietly scan energy signatures within a small space. All she had to do was wait. Soon, Evan arrived, smiling as usual. "Hey, partner. Ready to design the best energy device this academy has ever seen?" Scifi nodded, though she felt nervous. "Yes, let's begin," she said calmly. As Evan sat down beside her, the tablet began its silent work. A small green light flashed on the screen, invisible to Evan, but clear to Scifi. It was scanning his body for any sign of what had triggered the bracelet. They worked for some time, talking about their project. Evan was full of creative ideas, some of which surprised Scifi. "What if we make it fold into a smaller size when not in use?" he suggested. Scifi blinked. "That could work," she admitted. "I didn't think of that." Evan grinned. Sometimes simple ideas are the best. Scifi found herself almost smiling back, but her heart was still beating fast. Finally, the tablet finished the scan. Scifi glanced down, pretending to check something on the project. But what she saw on the screen made her freeze. "Match detected. Neural and energy resonance level, 99.8%. Scifi's eyes widened. "This can't be," she thought. "No one has ever had a match this strong. And with a human." She felt like her whole world had been turned upside down. "Everything okay?" Evan asked, noticing her sudden silence. Scifi quickly turned off the screen and smiled, though it felt fake. "Yes, I was just thinking about the design," she said. Evan looked at her carefully. "You sure? You seem kind of off." "I'm fine," Scifi said quickly. Evan nodded slowly, though he didn't look convinced. "All right. Well, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm a good listener," he said kindly. Scifi felt a strange warmth in her chest. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Valorians didn't usually talk about feelings. As class ended, Evan packed his things. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked with a smile. Scifi hesitated. She didn't know what to do. Should she keep working with him? Should she tell him what she found? But looking at his honest face, she felt she couldn't just walk away. "Yes," she said softly. "Tomorrow." As Evan walked out, Scifi sat back down, staring at her bracelet. "This human, who are you really, Evan Carter?" she whispered. Scifi knew one thing. She had to find answers. And soon. Something about Even was special. Something that could change everything. Scifi sat in her quiet room, the soft glow of her tablet lighting her thoughtful face. Had read the report again and again. A 99.8% match. That was unheard of. Not even among her own people, the Valorians, did anyone share such a deep connection. And here she was, with a human boy, a species considered too different for anything like this to happen. Her fingers moved nervously over the edge of the tablet as her mind raced with questions. How can this be real? She whispered to herself. The next day, as she walked through the academy halls, Scifi felt uneasy. She was usually calm and confident, but now everything felt strange. Other students walked by, chatting and laughing. Some noticed her and nodded politely, but Scifi barely noticed them. When she entered the class, Even was already there, waiting with a big smile. Hey, Scifi, I saved your seat, he said cheerfully. Scifi gave a small nod and sat down beside him. Thank you, she replied quietly. Even looked at her with a curious expression. You okay? You seem, I don't know, different. Scifi hesitated. She didn't know if she should tell him the truth, but part of her knew that she couldn't keep it hidden forever. Taking a deep breath, she decided to share at least a part of the truth. Even, she began slowly, I need to ask you something. Something important. Even raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Sure. What's up? She looked into his warm brown eyes, searching for the right words. My bracelet. It reacts when I'm near you. That doesn't usually happen. Even blinked in surprise. Really? What does that mean? Scifi hesitated again, then said softly, It means there is some kind of special connection between us, a bond that should not be possible. Even was quiet for a moment, thinking. Wow, he said finally. That sounds serious. It is, Scifi said. Valorian indicators only glow when there is a deep connection, something rare and powerful. Even leaned back in his chair, clearly surprised. So, what kind of connection are we talking about? Scifi shook her head. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to understand. Even looked thoughtful. Then he smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Well, I always knew I was special, he joked, giving her a playful wink. Despite her worries, Scifi couldn't help but smile a little at his joke. Perhaps you are, she said softly. Even leaned forward, more serious now. Scifi, if this is something important, I want to help. What can I do? Scifi was surprised by his response. She had expected him to be confused or scared, but instead, he was calm and willing to help. I was thinking, she said carefully, if we spend more time together, maybe we can learn what is causing this bond. Evan grinned. So, more secret science experiments. I'm in. Scifi shook her head slightly, but her eyes softened. Yes, something like that. For the rest of the class, they worked on their project, but now there was something more between them, a quiet understanding. They talked and laughed as they shared ideas, even suggested new designs that Scifi found surprisingly clever. How do you think of these things? She asked, honestly curious. Even shrugged with a smile. I guess humans are good at thinking outside the box. Scifi made a note of that. Maybe this was part of the answer. Maybe humans had abilities even they didn't fully understand. When class was over, Even stood up and stretched. So, where do we start with figuring this out? He asked. Scifi thought for a moment. There's a lab in the science wing. It has equipment that can measure energy patterns. If we go there after hours, we might find something. Even's eyes sparkled with excitement. An adventure. Count me in. Scifi smiled slightly, feeling a little more hopeful. Meet me there tonight. Deal, Even said with a grin, and walked off. As Scifi watched him leave, she touched her bracelet again. Maybe this bond isn't something to fear, she thought. Maybe it's something new, something important. That evening, as the sun set over the academy and stars filled the sky, Scileri prepared for what might be the most important discovery of her life. She didn't know what they would find, but for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. And deep inside, a quiet voice whispered to her, maybe even was the key to something far bigger than she could imagine. The sky over Galaxy's Prime Academy was filled with bright stars. The night was quiet, and most students were already in their rooms, resting for the next day. But Scileri was not resting. She walked quickly toward the science wing, her bracelet glowing softly, as if it knew something important was about to happen. Scileri reached the lab door and looked around to make sure no one was watching. She pressed her hand on the scanner. The door slid open with a soft sound, and she stepped inside. The room was large and filled with machines that hummed quietly. Glass walls showed shelves of strange devices and colorful liquids. Scileri walked to the center table and began preparing the energy scanner. If I can read Evan's energy signature again, maybe I will learn why we are connected, she whispered to herself. A few minutes later, the door opened again. Hey, partner, Evan said, stepping in with a smile. Ready for our secret science mission? Scileri turned and gave a small smile. Thank you for coming. Evan looked around with wide eyes. Wow, this place is awesome. I didn't know students were allowed in here at night. We are not, Scileri said quietly. But I had to know the truth. Evan chuckled. Well, breaking small rules for big answers sounds fine to me. Scileri showed Evan a chair next to the scanner. Sit here. I will scan your energy fields. It won't hurt, she added when she saw him pause. Okay, Evan said, sitting down and watching her with curious eyes. So you think this machine will tell us why your bracelet lights up? Yes, Scileri said, adjusting the scanner settings. It will show if there is something special in your energy. Maybe a rare frequency or a hidden pattern. Evan leaned back. All right, let's do it. Scileri started the machine. A soft blue light moved over Evan's body, scanning him from head to toe. Symbols and numbers danced across the screen as the scanner worked. Scileri watched carefully. As the scan finished, Scileri looked at the screen. What she saw made her heart race. Human Valorian energy resonance, 99.8%. Energy pattern. Unknown type, never recorded in database. This is not possible, Scileri whispered. There is no record of this type of energy. Not in any species. Evan stood up and walked to her side. What does it say? Scileri hesitated. She wanted to be careful with her words. It says, you have an energy pattern that matches mine almost perfectly. But it's not something anyone has seen before. Evan looked amazed. So, I'm unique. Scileri nodded slowly. Yes, very unique. Evan laughed a little, trying to hide his surprise. Well, I always wanted to be special, but I didn't think it would be like this. Scileri smiled softly. Neither did I. They stood in silence for a moment, both thinking about what this could mean. Finally, Evan asked, so what do we do now? Scileri looked at the glowing screen, then at her bracelet, which was shining brighter than ever before. I think we need to learn more about this connection. Maybe talk to someone who understands energy bonds. Evan nodded. Makes sense, but who can help with something that's never happened before? Scileri thought for a moment. Then an idea came to her. There is one professor, Professor Leinar. He is very old and wise. He studies rare energy patterns. Maybe he can help us. Then let's talk to him, Evan said. Scileri looked at him with soft eyes. Are you not scared? Evan smiled gently. Maybe a little, but I trust you, Scileri. And I want to know why this is happening. Don't you? Scileri felt something warm inside, something she couldn't explain. Yes, she said quietly. I want to know too. As they turned off the scanner and left the lab, Scileri felt different. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the connection between them. Maybe this strange bond was not a danger but a gift, something that could lead to a new understanding between their worlds. As they walked under the stars, side by side, Scileri glanced at Even and thought, maybe the universe brought us together for a reason. But what that reason was, neither of them knew yet. Tomorrow, they would visit Professor Linar, and perhaps they would find the answers they were searching for. The journey had just begun. The next morning, Scileri stood near the tall door of Professor Linar's office, her heart beating fast. She had never spoken to the old professor before. He was known as one of the most brilliant minds in the academy, and also one of the most mysterious. Beside her, Even waited quietly, his hands in his pockets. He looked calm, but Scileri could tell he was also curious and a little nervous. "Are you ready?" Even asked softly, giving her a small smile. Scileri took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes. Let's find out the truth." She pressed the small bell on the door. After a few moments, the door slid open with a soft whoosh. Inside, the room was filled with floating books, glowing crystals, and strange devices. In the centers, at Professor Linar, an old Valorian with long silver hair and sharp golden eyes. He looked up as they entered, and a small smile crossed his face. "Ah, Scileri of House Velar," he said in a deep voice. "And a human. Interesting. Come in." Scileri and Even stepped inside, feeling the strange energy in the room. Professor Linar pointed to two chairs in front of his desk. "Sit. I sense you have something important to ask." Scileri sat down carefully, her bracelet still glowing softly. "Professor, I need your help," she began. "Something impossible has happened, and I don't understand it." Linar raised an eyebrow. "Impossible? Tell me." Scileri took a breath and explained everything. How her indicator bracelet had glowed when she touched Even, the secret scan in the lab, and the discovery of their 99.8% energy match. As she spoke, Linar listened carefully, his golden eyes focused and serious. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, thinking deeply. "A human with such a connection to a Valorian," he murmured. "I have lived many years, and I have never heard of this." Even leaned forward. "Professor, do you think there's a reason this is happening? Are we in danger?" Linar looked at Even for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "I do not sense danger, but I do sense something very rare, perhaps something meant to change both your lives." Scileri frowned. "But how is it possible? Humans and Valorians are too different. This shouldn't happen." Linar gave a soft smile. "The universe is full of mysteries, young one. Sometimes bonds form beyond science and reason. Sometimes destiny brings people together for a purpose." Even and Scileri exchanged a glance. "But what should we do?" Scileri asked. "We cannot ignore this." Linar stood up and walked to a shelf, picking up a small crystal sphere that glowed faintly. "There is an ancient test," he said, turning to face them. "It can show the true nature of a bond, if it is strong, weak, or dangerous." Scileri looked curious. "What kind of test?" "This sphere," Linar explained, "reacts to the energy between two beings. If your connection is real, it will glow with the color of your bond." Even raised an eyebrow. "And what do the colors mean?" Linar smiled. "Red means danger. Blue means peace. Gold means destiny." Even glanced at Scileri and whispered, "Let's hope for gold, ha." Scileri gave him a small smile but said nothing. Linar placed the sphere on the table. "Both of you, place your hands on it." Even and Scileri reached out slowly. Their fingers touched the smooth surface of the crystal. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, light began to swirl inside the sphere. Soft at first, then growing brighter. Scileri held her breath as the light became clear, a bright, shining gold. Linar watched with wide eyes, then smiled deeply. Gold, a bond of destiny. Very rare, very powerful. Scifi stared at the sphere, feeling her heart beat faster. "What does this mean, Professor?" she asked quietly. "It means," Linar said, "that you two are connected in a way that may change both of your futures, and perhaps the futures of our worlds." Even looked surprised but also excited. "So, we're meant to meet, meant to be partners." Linar nodded. "Yes, but what that destiny is, only time will tell." Scifi felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She had always believed in science, in logic, but now something deeper was happening, something she could not explain with science alone. Even smiled at her gently. "Well, Scifi, looks like we're stuck together now." Scifi laughed softly for the first time in days. "It appears so." Linar looked at them with a thoughtful expression. "You must be careful. Others may not understand this bond. Some may fear it." Scifi nodded. "We will be careful." As they left the professor's room, walking side by side, Scifi felt a quiet strength growing inside her. Maybe this bond was something beautiful, something to protect. And as Evan looked up at the stars, he smiled and said, "Whatever this destiny is, we'll face it together." Scifi looked at him and softly agreed. Together. The next day, Scifi and Evan sat together in the academy garden. It was quiet, and only a few students were walking around. Tall silver trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves glowing softly in the sunlight. Scifi held her bracelet in her hand, watching the soft blue light moving inside it. Since yesterday's test with Professor Linar, she had been thinking deeply. The golden glow in the crystal sphere still stayed in her mind. A bond of destiny. Evan was sitting beside her, watching the sky. After a while, he looked at her and smiled. "You're thinking again," he said gently. Scifi looked at him, surprised. "How do you know?" Evan grinned. "Because you get that serious face when you think too much." Scifi smiled a little. "It is true. I am thinking a lot." Evan leaned closer, curious. "About what?" Scifi took a deep breath. "About us. About this connection. What if others don't accept it? What if it causes trouble?" Evan was quiet for a moment, then said, "Well, maybe some people won't understand. But if this is real, and I think it is, then we can face anything together." Scifi looked into his kind eyes, feeling a warmth inside. "Together," she repeated softly. Just then, Scifi's communicator beeped. She looked down and saw a message. "It's from Professor Linar," she said. "He wants to see us." Evan raised an eyebrow. "More tests." Scifi shook her head. "He says he has something important to tell us." Without waiting, they both stood up and walked toward the professor's office. Professor Linar's warning. When they entered Linar's room, they saw him standing by the window, looking out at the academy grounds. He turned when they arrived, his face serious. "I am glad you came quickly," he said. "What is it, Professor?" Scifi asked, feeling a bit worried. Linar walked over to them and said in a low voice, "I have done more research on your bond. I have found something unexpected." Evan looked confused. "What kind of unexpected?" Linar looked at them both, his golden eyes sharp. "Your connection is not only powerful, it is growing stronger every day. Soon, others will notice." Scifi frowned. "But what is wrong with that?" Linar took a deep breath. "Some will fear it. Some leaders believe that humans and Valorians should not mix. They think such a bond could be dangerous, a threat to the balance between our worlds." Evan's eyes widened. "But we didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Linar said, "but not everyone will see it that way." Scifi felt her heart sink. "What should we do, Professor?" "You must be careful," Linar said. "But there is something else." He walked over to his desk and picked up a small device. "There is a planet, far from here, called Arelon. It is a place where ancient Valorian knowledge is kept. And there may be answers there about bonds like yours." Scifi looked surprised. "But Arelon is a restricted planet. Only special missions are allowed there. Linar nodded. I know. But if you want to understand your connection and protect yourselves, you must go there. Even blinked. So, we're going on a secret mission now. Linar gave a small smile. Yes, and I will help arrange your travel, but you must leave soon, before anyone learns what we are doing. Scileri felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was much bigger than she had thought. Why would ancient knowledge be hidden on Erelon? She asked. Linar's eyes grew serious. Because there are secrets about the first Valorians and other species. Some say Valorians once had connections like yours, long ago, before the knowledge was lost. Even looked at Scileri, his eyes shining with curiosity. Then we have to go. We have to find out. Scileri nodded, feeling her heart stronger now. Yes, we will go. Linar placed the small device in Scileri's hand. This will guide you to a contact on Erelon, someone who can help. But you must be careful. Trust no one except each other. Scileri and Even exchanged a look of determination. We will be careful, Scileri promised. Good, Linar said. You leave tonight. Be ready. Preparing for the journey. As they left Linar's office, Even looked at Scileri with a grin. So, first secret science tests. Now a secret mission to another planet. I didn't think my life would get this exciting. Scileri smiled, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. It is more than exciting. It is dangerous. Even laughed softly. Well, if I'm going to face danger, I'm glad it's with you. Scileri looked at him with soft eyes. Thank you, Even. I am glad too. As they walked back to their rooms to pack, Scileri touched her bracelet again. It glowed warmly, as if ready for the journey ahead. In her heart, Scileri knew this mission would change everything. They would find answers, but they might also find new dangers. Still, as she glanced at Even walking beside her, she felt a quiet strength. No matter what was waiting for them on Erelon, they would face it together. And so, as the stars rose higher in the night sky, their adventure was about to begin. The spaceship glided smoothly through the stars, heading toward Erelon, a planet covered in silver forests and glowing blue lakes. Scileri sat near the window, watching as the planet grew larger. Even sat beside her, looking both excited and nervous. Almost there, Even said, trying to sound cheerful. Scileri nodded, but her mind was full of questions. Do you think we'll find answers? She asked softly. Even smiled gently. We've come this far. I believe we will. As the ship landed on Erelon, a cool breeze touched their faces. The air was fresh, and the sky above was full of 3 moons glowing softly. Waiting near the landing area was an old Valorian woman in long silver robes. Her eyes were sharp, but kind. She held a staff that glowed faintly. Welcome, Scileri of House Velar. Welcome, human Even, she said. I am Ilaris, keeper of ancient knowledge. Professor Linar told me you were coming. Scileri stepped forward politely. Thank you, Keeper Ilaris. We seek the truth about our bond. Ilaris nodded. Then follow me. You both are part of something very old, something almost forgotten. The hidden chamber. Ilaris led them through a forest where the trees sparkled as if filled with starlight. Soon, they reached a stone door, covered with strange glowing symbols. With a touch of her staff, the door opened, revealing a hidden chamber filled with old books, glowing crystals, and ancient artifacts. This place holds secrets of our past, Ilaris explained. Long ago, Valorians formed deep bonds with other beings, including humans. But over time, those bonds were lost, and the knowledge was hidden. Scileri's eyes widened. So it has happened before. Ilaris nodded. Yes, your bond is not a mistake. It is a return to something natural, something powerful. Even looked around in wonder. Why was it forgotten? Ilaris looked sad, because some feared such bonds. They feared the power that came when 2 different beings were connected. Scifi took Evan's hand gently, feeling strength from his presence. What kind of power? Ilaris smiled softly. The power to unite worlds, to bring peace where there is conflict, but also the power to create great change, and some fear change. The ancient test. Ilaris walked to a large crystal in the center of the room. This is the bond crystal. It will show you the true depth of your connection. Scifi and Ivan looked at each other. Both were nervous but ready. Place your hands together on the crystal, Ilaris instructed. Slowly, they both reached out, their hands touching as they placed them on the crystal's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, light filled the room, bright and golden, like sunlight breaking through darkness. Symbols began to appear around them, floating in the air, and a soft hum filled the room. Ilaris watched with awe. In all my years, I have never seen such a strong bond, she whispered. Scifi felt a warm energy moving through her, as if her heart and Ivan's heart were connected. Ivan looked at her, amazed. I feel like I can hear you in my mind. Scifi smiled, eyes wide. I feel the same. Ilaris nodded. Your bond is now complete. You are connected not only by energy, but by mind and spirit. Together, you can do great things. The message from the past. As the light faded, a holographic figure appeared above the crystal, a Valorian woman with kind eyes. To those who find this, the figure said, know that bonds between different beings are a gift. They bring strength, hope, and unity. Never let fear break what is meant to be together. The image vanished, but her words stayed in Scifi's heart. Ilaris turned to them. You now carry this message. The future of our worlds may depend on what you do next. Scifi and Ivan stood tall, understanding the weight of their connection. A promise for the future. As they left the chamber, Ivan looked at Scifi with a smile. So, we're officially bonded now. Scifi laughed softly. It seems so. Ivan held out his hand. Then let's make a promise. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. Scifi took his hand, her eyes shining. I promise. They stood for a moment, watching the moons of Arelon rise higher in the sky. Ivan looked up and said, you know, Scifi, I think our bond is more than destiny. It's a choice, and I choose to stand with you. Scifi smiled warmly. And I choose you, Ivan. Always. Returning home. A few days later, they returned to the academy. People stared as they walked through the halls, some curious, some unsure. But Scifi and Ivan walked proudly, knowing who they were. Professor Linar met them with a smile. You found the truth, didn't you? Scifi nodded. Yes, and we are ready to protect our bond, no matter what. Linar looked pleased. Good, because I believe the future is in your hands. Ivan grinned. No pressure, huh? Linar laughed softly. Great things always begin with small steps. The beginning of a new chapter. As Scifi and Ivan stood together, watching the sunset over the academy, they knew that their journey was only beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger because of the bond they shared. And as the stars lit up the night sky, Scifi whispered, whatever happens, we are ready. Ivan smiled and replied, together. And so, under the stars of two worlds, a new story of hope and unity began.